I talk about it a lot in yoga, like on the spectrum of stress or, burnout. Are you 11 or are you a 1? And do you even know? So understanding what that trigger is. My sleep goes out. I don't get enough water. I start to go for fast food or sweets. Like, you need to understand your personal triggers to stress, and then you need to course correct.
Welcome to Trujectory, the podcast committed to helping you align with who you really are, your true self. The one who is so comfortable with their uniqueness, so in love with life, and so effortlessly able to manifest everything they always dreamt of. I want this podcast to be a resource to help you jump into the driver's seat rather than continuing as a passenger in your own story. Let's understand why we choose to hold ourselves back so we can shed the lies that we've programmed into our minds. We can heal the root causes and step into the epic human that we know we can be. If you're ready to start aligning with your trajectory, let's do it. So we are here with Mel today, another one of my favorite humans, someone who has inspired me in many ways, and I'm so glad that you've come on board. Thank you, Mel. Hello, how you doing?
Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, or whenever everyone's listening to this, good evening.
Yeah, exactly. So Mel, I do want to just quickly, for the listeners, introduce how we met, because I think it's really just paints the picture of the boss that you are, and I love that of you, your confidence. It's something that I always am asking you about. You're always giving me great advice about how to sort of step into my true essence and my true self, and that's what we're here to talk about more of. But quick little trip down memory lane. So this was... It's so crazy to think that you, like, we've spoken about this, but you're like one of my oldest friends now. Like, we've known each other for so long. I know. And old, right? I know.
It's amazing that I'm only 25.
I know, right? We did all this when we were 12. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was working, as I still am, at a production house. We make video content with my business colleague and myself. We are asked to come in to a meeting with Mad Mex to do some video content. And we didn't have any idea of what the brief was or anything, and that's quite normal. We usually rock up to clients who want to have a chat with us in person about what sort of video they're looking for, and then we can discuss, quotes and different options and all the different ways we can film it. And so that's our understanding. We're walking into this new client going, wonder what we're going to, what they're going to want. And something else has transpired on the Mad Mex side, where I think they believed that there were production companies coming in to pitch ideas about how we were going to sell a new burrito or whatever the promotion was at the time. So long story short, business colleague Dave and I rock up to this meeting, all excited to hear what's going on. And here's Mel, this powerhouse who intimidated the F out of me, and her colleague Michael. And they're sitting behind this desk, and it was like something, like some sort of reality TV show. It was like there were judges. And we came in and we sat down ready to hear what was going on. And Mel just went, okay, pitch. And we were going, oh my gosh, wait, we're supposed to pitch? And the thing that I love about this moment was that this was a moment that shifted me into my power. It really, really did, because I had two choices. I could go, oh, sorry, we don't know what's going on here. or,
So what now?
Yeah, exactly. Or I could just go for it. And I ended up listening to my intuition, and it was one of the first times that I just trusted myself and went, you know what? Whatever's coming to my head, I'm going to let it come out, and here it comes. And I ended up pitching this idea, and we ended up getting that job, and we ended up working together for a few years after that at Mad Mex, and then we've continued to work with each other and all the other roles that you've had since then. We've, cultivated this beautiful friendship along the way as well. But it was just such an amazing moment. It was for me. It changed, and you didn't know about this until like 5 years later, that it actually changed my working relationship with my boss at the time. He was more so doing all the, the technical side and the admin and the customer relations and all of that sort of thing. And he was doing more of the pitching. It wasn't necessarily me that was doing that. I was sort of more head of creative. When an idea was given to me, I would go, okay, this is how we're going to visually make it come to life. But that moment was, oh, Sarah can come up with ideas. Sarah can pitch too. And it was a surprise to me as well. So I've always been very grateful for that moment. It really shocked me into finding my power. But Mel,
it's not uncommon, I have to say. Your feedback is... I've had similar feedback before. One, putting people on the spot. That's one. Yep. But also, I think, in fairness, I usually get a gut feel before somebody comes in if I'm going to work with them anyways.
Yeah.
So, because it's not like I just randomly say, hey, come in. Like I'm doing my research webs, you're
Yes.
I should say trolling, investigating and going through stuff. And yeah. So, but before we keep going, I just want to acknowledge the traditional custodians.
Absolutely. Very good.
The Gadigal people and Bidjigal people were on the country where I am, of Eora Nation. And want to pay my respects to the elders past and present. So,
Beautiful.
and
Thank you for the
important before
reminder.
we continue the conversation on land.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that reminder. So I do want to tap into the confidence side, because this is definitely something that you embody. And like you said, you work with so many different people all the time. On top of the people that you're working with, you also tend to find a lot of younger budding entrepreneurs or people that are coming up in their own sort of businesses, and you seem to mentor them, whether you want to or not. It just seems to happen to you quite often. You attract
just opinionated, but yeah.
But that's, that's great. That's fantastic. You're real. So I want to know, has this always been the way you've been? Did you grow up this way? Did you have, really strong, was your mum really strong like this and showing you that this is the way to be? Or what was it? Or is it something that you had to sort of cultivate yourself over time, your confidence?
Yeah, it's a good one, because I've probably reflected on this in my 40s. You have time to reflect back on a life well lived. And yeah, I think for me, it is an obvious. I think probably for most of my life, I'm like, well, I'm just stating the obvious, but I've come to realize is really not obvious. It's not obvious to everyone around me, and certainly not the person I'm speaking with. So I do get that reaction a lot. Like, remember when we met and you did this and it was really jarring, and then it led me to X, Y, Z. Like that's kind of a common feedback that I have from people, which is kind of ironic because I had no clue at the time. So I think in maturing, I'm able to still do the same thing, but I do it in a less jarring way for individuals. I sort of position it as, you present to me, or you seem to be XYZ type of person with XYZ type of skill or trait. I mean, are you aware of that? And it's a bit more probing to the individual rather than, I really like you. You should do this and da 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 da. This just suits you really well. And assuming they know, because I've just assumed what I'm seeing is what everybody else is recognizing and seeing. So, so yeah. But I mean, the crux of it is I'm just opinionated and I have no filter. But I would probably say that's a little bit of my environment. My mom was really. I'd say my parents were conservative to the extent of how they raised children. You barely miss school if you're sick. Like you're still going to school. She worked for one company for 40 years. She's married to the same man until he passed away. Like, those traditional, let's say, boomer values. And so I had a strong work ethic, which also then, translated to getting experiences probably at a younger age, because you would go babysit, or we were selling daffodils at the end of our long driveway on the farm. You sort of learn skills through that, and speaking with adults and whatever comes from that. So then you begin to hone it later in life. I'd say, being in a biracial family, so dad was black, mom's white. Was raised by both parents, but we also unexpectedly had my grandmother with us on the farm. And she's a strong black woman. And with any mother-in-law situation, you'll see women getting along interestingly, and then add the complexities of a biracial marriage to that, and biracial children. I think, as an observer, I think I was really good as a child just to watch. I'm sure I've picked up some skills and some communication styles from that environment in a good way. I'm mindful of not getting I think, because also it's funny, I just got back from Queensland, and I was with a friend, and we were at the airport. We're sort of arguing around communication styles. And so she had witnessed me on the phone, and I hope she doesn't listen to this. But she was saying how, I thought you were really, what did she say? Like, I don't know if it's abrasive or mean. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I was just frustrated. But it's interesting that you're interpreting it that way. And then that led into a conversation. She's white. And that led into a conversation of, a way of thinking, and, the angry black female stereotype. So am I not allowed to be upset, and I'm not allowed to communicate that frustration because now it's being misconstrued or interpreted as I'm angry and I'm aggravated
Yeah.
and all that sort of stuff, right? So I just find communication and how we speak to one another really fascinating
Oh, yes.
because, one could say one's blunt or direct and another person is, well, you're being abrasive and argumentative or what have you, right? So very conscious of that. But in my younger years, in my 20s and probably a little of my 30s, I was just living my truth and speaking and if you didn't like it, not my problem, sort of thing. So I've
Yeah.
had more compassion and awareness along the way that I've honed.
Yeah, right.
And it just makes the path a little bit less bumpy if you can have a bit of empathy, compassion for the words you're saying. Because I think when we're
Yeah.
younger, we tend to maybe brush it off as, oh, it's just words, they don't mean anything, which is probably the intention they're describing. But
Yeah.
words do mean something. They are powerful. And that could be in a good way or in a bad way,
Yeah.
So
And
I think
people
it's
can hold on to them without you even
yeah.
knowing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think, especially as women, I think it's important to genuinely like come from a place of gratitude and genuineness to call out an individual and say, wow, you're, really vibrant or you're really tenacious or, you're such a great speaker. I'd love to have that skill. Like really point out people's positives because,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
person may actually not be aware because no one says anything because we're too polite or,
Well, that's
you know
the
what I mean?
thing. That's the key here that, even though there have been some people along your path, no doubt, that have sort of gone, oh my gosh, you're a bit abrasive or you've shocked me or something. One, you are literally, and I can say it from firsthand experience, you're shocking people into their truth that you really are. But the thing is, I've gone on the opposite for most of my life, and you've known this about me. We've spoken about this in the past, where I've felt like I'm too much of a people pleaser. I just want to maintain the status quo, and I'm empathic. So if I am triggering someone else, I'm also triggering myself, and then there's this energy. And a lot of the times, I was, not taught specifically, but it was modeled to me that you don't create those sorts of situations. You keep it, keep the status quo going, keep everything calm, and only speak when you need to, and all of these sorts of things. The thing is with you've cut out a lot of unnecessary experiences and interactions. You know what I mean? Whereas I might have let someone go, oh yeah, I totally agree with you, even though I don't. Oh yeah, absolutely. Totally vibing here. Yes. Like just
Yeah.
to make sure that you feel good. And a lot of the time it's not even a conscious thing. I realize it when I leave a conversation and I reflect and go, what was that? I wasn't even backing myself. I wasn't even representing what I believe. It's like I stood out of my body and I just became whatever they needed me to be to make them feel better. And so because of that, then what happens? I agree to things I don't want to do. I lock myself into commitments but I have integrity. So I always go to those commitments. So I ended up for so many years of my life going, I feel like the majority of my life is spent doing things I don't want to do for people I don't even want to do it for. And this is a huge part of why I'm doing this podcast. And wanting to have these sorts of conversations, and I want to surround myself with more people like yourself that are like, you know what, this is about to be an awkward conversation maybe, but it has to happen because these are the facts, this is how I feel. And like you said, if you're leading with compassion and gratitude, then all you're doing is speaking your truth, and you're culling those unnecessary interactions, those things that come from those conversations that aren't actually being real. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't really know me. They don't really know what I represent and who I am. And for a long time, I didn't either, because I'm going, who is that person? Like, what the hell?
Well, I think your journey, people pleasing is definitely probably a rite of passage for a lot of people. In particular, from my experience, women. I mean, I was the same, but also sometimes it hits later in life, as in you might be conscious of it in your 20s, or you might not find out till your 30s or your 40s. So it could really be a whole life journey. But I think, the things that feed into that is not being taught what boundaries are, number one, but then also having confidence or dealing with insecurities. So I think it's a combination that, I think things are slightly changing, or hopefully massively changing, for the generation coming through, where we're giving them confidence, we're giving a voice, to speak and what have you. So, I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, but I'm sure there's a lot of people that share it, where you as a female, you go along to get along, you don't create any disruption. And I mean, going through earlier part of my career, not just looking at sort of childhood and teenage years, but going through the earlier part of my career as I got into management roles, I was usually the youngest or the only female in the room. And, oh, you've got such neat printing, can you go up on the board and write it, and like all those things that nowadays that shit would not fly at all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, whereas we didn't really know any better, we didn't know we could challenge that sort of misogyny or what have you. And it's not just between men and women, it's women, how they present in the world. So I look at my nieces that she's just about to finish university, and my other niece is about to be 12, so going into high school. And confidence is such a major thing, but also tuning into your intuition. Like, what does your intuition tell you? Because I think where or how you're feeling is a strong indicator of what's happening in your environment. So we might initially talk about just like personal safety. If you're walking down the road, you just get an icky feeling, like you need to action that, because even if you can't see a threat, something's happening and your intuition is giving you a warning flag. Obviously that's for my older niece. For my younger niece, it's more about how she's being perceived in the world. So she's black, and she's got really curly afro hair. And out of myself and my two older sisters, I'm the other person who has the afro hair. My other sisters, because we're mixed, very thinner hair, straight. So,
Yeah, right.
my niece sort of identifies, she sees a lot of herself in me because I've got big hair. But I don't know what it's like at her school. And, she might look a bit different. And therefore, as a younger girl, you're questioning, no one wants to be different in school. They always want to be the same and get along and be included, right?
Yep.
So, I think females, we've got to look at, our self-confidence. And I think, now children being raised, it's across the board. It's not just a female thing, but I'm going from my experience, back in the 80s, where it was a big deal because, I was only black kids in the class, or, it was really obvious. So, I think confidence is super important. Now, how do you get confidence? Well, hopefully you have a supportive, loving environment, because you need to hear things. And if that's not in your your immediate environment, hopefully within your school or your community or the people you interact with. And if you're later in life, hopefully you're surrounding yourself with friends or a work environment that gives you positive reinforcement and encouragement.
Well, that's where being truthful comes into it, right? Making sure that you're representing what you believe in, so you're attracting the right people. Otherwise, you're going to be attracting a circle that you guys don't even get me. Like, and then your confidence is shot. But sorry, keep going. What?
Yeah, but you also have to practice it as well. So, you don't become this eloquent speaker overnight. You've got to fumble and stumble through, maybe saying, actually, no, I don't want to do it. And that might come out a bit awkward in the first instance. But I mean, by your third or fourth try, you'll be like, no. And as it's kind of funny because with my yoga teaching, I would always say, like, no is a complete sentence. So when you do go and say, yeah, no, I don't want to do that, or like, they ask you out, no, thank you. You don't have to then explain, like you don't have to give this 5 minute thing about why you're saying no, because you have every right to say no. And that's whether you're a mother with children and you're being pulled in many directions, or your boss at your work, or your boyfriend or girlfriend who wants you to do something that you don't want to do. Like in every facet of your life, you can say no, and you shouldn't feel guilty about it.
That's a huge one. Yeah. I've only just been able to do that recently, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I still find myself, when I say no, I then write a whole essay and then I go, delete,
delete,
leave it at the no.
The verbal diarrhea that follows.
Yeah.
But I think once you can sort of understand what a boundary is, and that, you can say no, I think then switching to how can you preempt or proactively avoid situations so that you're not put in that circumstance? Because I think a lot of the times we can set ourselves up to fail because we're giving the impression that we want to do it. And then when the ask happens, you're like, oh, no, I don't want to do it. But the person's like, but hang on a second, you just seemed really keen and we're talking about
Yeah.
it because we're thinking that makes the other person feel good.
Yes.
But now it's just setting yourself up for an awkward conversation of saying no, right?
Oh yeah, I've had
So
plenty
it's,
of those. Yep.
yeah, it's sort of prepping people like, that sounds really interesting. I think, that's exciting for you. Not sure if it's my sort of jam, and I'm not sure if I'd want to do it, but I think that's great for you. And then that way, if they then go and ask you, you sort of can go, well, I did say it's not my
Yeah.
jam. You know what I mean? Like you can kind of navigate it a bit easier
Yeah.
rather than someone going, well, I got the impression that you wanted to do it, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and then feeling like you've let them down and then feeling obligated and all those fun things that come along with false interactions. I've got to come up with a name for it because
Yeah.
this is something that I fell into that for so many years and I'm still coming out of it now. There are some people I really can feel I can speak my mind, I can say whatever I want and they will respect that. And I still have some people in, working relationships and stuff that I know they always try to push the boundaries a little bit because they've dealt with me when I was very deep in my people pleaser modes and it's still like breaking those molds and those images about me around them. But it's definitely a process. But I mean, when it comes to really owning your true self, like the authentic side of you that is not trying to be anything other than what you really are, healing is a huge part, right? And I know that you have had a lot of focus on healing and you're constantly on a healing journey, which is what we should all be doing, right? You've learned modalities and you've done all sorts of things. So can you tell us a little bit about your healing journey? Like you've gone through quite a few, family with your father's passing and everything. What were the big things that sort of helped you really maintain who you are and not get lost in that process?
Yeah, I think probably from an early age, loss was a part of my experience. So, I mean, even just having two older sisters, by the time I got to be 11, they're already out the door. So there's that loss of your sibling that you look up to. I idolize my sisters. I used to pay my sister to sleep on her floor in her bedroom. You know what I mean? Like I'm just,
Oh,
because but I'd also steal all her clothes and spill mustard all down it. So I'm sure I
Who's
wasn't
just
the greatest.
reimbursing her?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Probably wasn't the best little sister, but I definitely love them and idolize them, still do. But yeah, like I think, if I think back at a younger age, in the family, my other grandfather died really suddenly when I was quite small, and he was like visiting from Guyana. So that was a bit of a shocker. But at a young age, I'm not computing the significance of it. It was just like, oh, grandma lives with us now. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, my uncle was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, which is now called ALS, and sort of witnessing, I used to observe a lot. So witnessing that journey with my mom. And then I was really best mates with my other grandpa. And then he died suddenly from a heart attack. That was a bit of a shocker. So there was sort of points from a very young age all the way through to high school. I lived in a small town. We had one high school and a lot of deaths in the high school just from like car accidents or drugs or things that you'd find in a small community with, farmland and people, driving stupidly or whatever. So I'd say death and loss was sort of around me, having those sort of experiences. Yes, then my dad died in my early 20s, which definitely, I think, it's my point of view that fathers tend to be this lighthouse and this beacon, and so I think when that's lost, you sort of almost become a little lost. It's like the light's been put out, there's darkness, and you're trying to figure out your way through. So I think it made me look at everything I was sort of striving for was probably through a place of pleasing my father or making my father proud or my parents proud, and then with that gone, it's like, I don't really need to do that anymore, do I? So I wasn't actually living for me per se, so it sort of makes you look at your life and where it's going a little bit differently. Probably the way he died, it was a long-term illness, and it was just by chance that I flew home to see him, and then it turned into helping him transition. So, I mean, that's an experience unto its own. I was very fortunate to be there, which I appreciate and have a lot of gratitude for. And then I had a lot of deaths after dad. It was like my great uncle and just, strong male figures, I'd probably say, and family members. So it really, because it was such a close succession, then it's like, okay, I'm not happy right now. And what's going on? Why aren't I happy? I think, again, that's that intuition thing. Like, okay, there's the grieving, which is natural and you have to do that. But it was just something like, this is not, the life I've created is not working for me. Something needs to change. And I find whenever you go through life, when there's a significant change on the horizon, there's almost like this lull period or transition period where like nothing happens, and it's almost this most frustrating thing because you're like, should I go left, should I go right, what's going on, I'm bored, I've got anxiety, I'm depressed, like, there's all these things going on. So you can feel the change, that there should be a change, but you don't know where or what the next step
Yeah.
is.
Yep.
And that's really frustrating, right? Especially if you're not happy. And then suddenly then the change hits. And that could be like a year,
Yeah.
But then I find when the change hits, it's sudden, and there's just this overwhelming sense of knowing, like, oh, this feels right. Because you've been in a state of, this doesn't feel right. So when that comes along, you're like, no, this feels good. I can feel it in my body. It's a resounding yes to whatever that might be. It might be a person, it might be a job, whatever. It's something that gets you really lit up and really excited, even if the situation might go, oh, this is a bit risky, or, oh, this seems a bit crazy. Like, am I doing this properly? Like, I don't know. So to other people around you, they may not see or feel the same way. So they might get confused, and then they may not support you, right?
Yeah.
And I think you have to put aside, because you're only living your life, not anybody else's, and no one's living yours. And you have to really tune into that to go, like, if I take moving to Australia, for example, it was an overnight decision. But everyone around me was like, what is going on? Hello, Australia's on the other side of the world. Have you even been there? Like, it really, I was surprised how people were not supportive.
Yeah.
And selfishly so. I get it. And then, once you do those experiences enough, it becomes, like, again, a muscle, right? Like,
Yeah.
you
More
tend to
resilient.
recognize it sooner. The transition happens a lot quicker. You recognize, yep, like, you don't hesitate as much. So that's really important to embrace that kind of change. I think I was just listening to Esther Perel. I think she's a psychologist in relationships. Highly recommend her podcast. It's amazing. But they said the only said certainty is the death of change. Like, you can't change if you want to line everything up and know exactly how it's going to, like, play out, right? Like, you
Exactly
have to
right.
step into the unknown.
Yeah.
And so then I'd probably say that was my biggest aha moment in a very self-aware container, moving to Australia. I'd done it before, but I wasn't aware what I was doing. So then there comes this point where you're sort of going through life and doing what you're doing. And then there comes another point in life where you're like, this is what I'm doing. Okay, yeah, I get it. Now you might put a label on it or recognize it as whatever. And then you can move through your experiences a bit quicker, or you can attract more quicker for your learning. And then your growth, compounds. Your growth just keeps getting more and more and more, which is fantastic, right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
I don't know where it stopped. There's no ceiling per se. And so that's how then I got into yoga, and how I got into Romi Romi. And, I'd probably say I was doing it in my job since I was little. I just didn't know that that's what I was doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, for anyone who doesn't know what Romi Romi is, can you just give us a really quick description of that?
Yeah. So, like, the elevator pitch is, you're clearing generational karma.
Yeah,
But
beautiful.
it's a beautiful Indigenous practice from New Zealand. And I've studied and been mentored by an elder who's based in Australia, which is fantastic. And it's such a unique practice. It's really hard to encapsulate, but I'm just going to say it through the eyes of people that come. They're like, oh, it's a massage. And I'm like, no, it's not a massage.
Yeah.
You would sit with the person and talk, and through talking, there's some things happening in the background. So I won't sort of ruin the surprise.
Yep.
And then you get on a table, which is like a massage table. You're fully clothed. And I sort of describe it as like a myofascia release. So myofascia is that thick layer underneath your skin that holds your muscles and bones together. And it's, mapped out. There's not one part of the body that doesn't really get touched, except for the genitals, of course, where you're going through these significant points on the body, applying pressure. So that's what's physically is happening. But you're doing, you're speaking Maori, you're let's say having incantation. There's the person who's doing it is a conduit between
For
your
that
ancestors and the person on the table.
Beautiful.
And so it's this beautiful healing of It could feel like you're going and talking to a therapist. It could feel like you're talking to your best mate. It could feel like you're talking to someone maybe who's passed on. Like everybody's experience is going to be different based on their journey. Overall, you get off the table feeling light as a feather, but going through you start at the feet and then you work your way up and then back down and all around. It might feel a bit uncomfortable, right? And that's really where the energy needs to be released. So, emotions get stuck in the body. They need to be released somehow. Okay. And then the other layer to this is, we all walk with 7 generations. So you can imagine how many individuals that is, right? If you just look at your immediate family, let's just say you've got 2 parents and 3 sisters or 3 brothers or whatever, that's, and then grandparents and then aunts and uncles. Okay, that's a lot of people in that one generation. Compound that by 7. It's a lot of people walking with you in life, which we may not, because we can't physically see people, we think, oh, they're not there. But I mean, if anyone, especially in Australia, is learns about the Aboriginal culture, this is not just indicative to New Zealand culture. It's a lot of Indigenous practices, right? So it's a real excuse me, it's just a really beautiful modality that's, I find, unique, and I hope it becomes more mainstream, and people can experience it, because I consider it to be life-changing, which is why I've stepped into it, because I've seen the benefits it's had for me in my life and the people around me. So, yeah, I hope I didn't confuse people with that explanation.
No, that's great, because it is such a unique one. It's not like you're going for a Reiki session or just some sort of other therapy. It's very, it sounds fascinating. What was that saying that you said? I can't remember the first word. What was it that is the death of change?
Consistency.
See, I keep saying
certainty.
Certainty, that's right.
Yeah.
I was saying consistency. I'm
consistency,
like, no, it's not consistency.
No. Certainty.
So that quote is just so poignant right now, and that's what I want to talk about with you. That's what I love about what you've done with your career. So you've not only created your own role as the CEO of, you created like the Chamber of Commerce for Canada and Australia, right? Which is huge. So you're bridging lots of new connections and relationships, and the work that you're doing is fantastic. I can only imagine where it's going to go in future. But you're not one to sit at a 9 to 5 and do the same thing every day. You've had your yoga, you teach, you do your Romi Romi and whatever else is going on. You've had all sorts of other startups that you've helped people with and things. So what is that? Why is it that you don't want to do that 9 to 5 sort of thing? Like, have you always been that way, or?
Yeah. Look, when I started off, you sort of, where you are now, you have to sort of look back. When you're on a farm and you're doing chores, all weekend long, it sucked. So going back to that way I was raised, with the conservativeness of, you got hard. Saturday was always cleaning the house day, every weekend, it's never fails. So, then that led me to, so being from Canada, Tim Hortons, which is sort of the coffee donut shop of Canada. Everyone knows a large double, what that means. That was my first job, official job, I should say. And, there's shift work. And I was just always like, okay, I go in, I do my best, like I would at home, because otherwise I'm going to get in trouble with my parents, and maybe the people pleasing side. Do you want to pick up that shift? Yes. If you need help, I'll help you, and so, at one point I was doing midnight shifts, the graveyard shift between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. And then I got a job. I started my first corporate job with Toronto Dominion Bank, which is like the equivalent of like Combank here in Australia. And that was through a work experience through school. And then they hired me. So then I went and worked there 9 to 5. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, I was just working. And I remember my mom was just like, I think you shouldn't work this much, but I loved
for sleep.
Yeah, exactly. But I loved it both. Who doesn't love a good donut? And the bank was so fast. I was dealing with money. I was just like, this is, if you can learn the way money moves, it was fascinating. So, so I look at that, and they've always been opportunity. Like, I applied to work at Tim Hortons. Funny, I applied to work at the McDonald's. When the McDonald's opened up in our town, it was a really big deal.
Nice.
I didn't get hired. And like, all the cool people in high school were like being hired at McDonald's. And then Tim Hortons, which is a franchise, and they're just as big, if not bigger, than McDonald's in Canada. But when they hired me, it was just like, oh, okay, so I'm the underdog. McDonald's didn't want me, which is so silly. But I put a photo of my school photo on there, like this is Mel. Anyways, so and then the TD Bank was offered out of the work experience I did with the school program. So I've sort of always fallen into these roles, but it's been based on hard work and effort. So whether you're paying me or it's a work experience, I'm going to do my best because I was taught to always put your best foot forward, right? And so that sort of followed me through to any job or opportunity. So I remember when I was working for Lindt and Sprüngli, which is Lindt chocolate in Canada. They hired me for a role, and then I was doing all this other stuff. They're like, oh my God, like you need to be doing this. So they just sort of see what I'm capable of, and they see the hard work behind it. And it sort of led to other stuff. So with the chamber, I started off as a volunteer. I wasn't there for a job. I had a job. I worked at Mad Mex. But I just thought, I connect with the mission of being, Australian Canada relations. I'm a citizen of both countries. And then I was like, oh, your website's not that great. And, like I was noticing, let me help you with that.
Yeah.
Let me people please. Let me help you with that.
Yeah.
I was just, when I'm a part of something, again, put best foot forward. I want to be proud and where I can help, which they needed some help. And then that sort of grew organically. And I think I've had some really great mentors over the period of my career. I mean, it's been over 25 years now. And I can also look at a business and understand what it needs because I have such experience across many sectors and understand how business works, your marketing department, your finance department, your operations, your sales. So then obviously if I know information, I'm happy to share that with anybody who needs it. I've learned to not help people that don't need help or don't want help because that's just a waste of everyone's time. But there's a lot of people that value it. And then it's kind of funny how I'm now in a role where I'm literally helping my job is to help other businesses expand to the opposite country, right? So it's just sort of taken what I've done and magnified it globally. So it's kind of funny.
But again, that's what I always talk about with, when you're aligning with your true self, what happens? You're vibrating at your true light level, your higher vibration. You start to attract the things that are aligned with you. And that's what you're doing. And I mean, you're already absolutely killing it in business, in the career game. But I still think you've got so many big, huge things on the horizon. I don't think it, I know it. So I'm so excited to see where you end up going and what else is attracted to you. But like you said, you're just effortlessly falling into these things because you're putting your best foot forward and you're always just honoring your truth and being who you are at all times. You're not faking it. You're not, but you're also clear with boundaries. So if you do need to sort of, okay, I'm burning out a little bit here, I'm sure you're quite good at, placing some boundaries in and going, okay, well, we need to restructure this a little bit because I know how important my health is now. But
I think just to that though, I think it's, with boundaries and whatever, I think I value transparency. And I can tell you, like, there's people I come across in life and I go, you're full of shit. And, you're ego driven and what you're saying doesn't match. You know what I mean? So I think if I value transparency, then I have to give transparency as well. So the reason why you and I have worked together for so many years is because in any role that I have, we've got that established shared value of transparency. So, I'll say, look, this is my budget. I can't afford this. Can you do anything with it? And I also understand if you can't do anything with it, I don't take it personally.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's just, how can we work together? And if we know we like working together, then we always find a way. Yeah. And when this swings and roundabouts in business, next time I might have a larger budget, in which case, you know what I mean? So I think it's about being like respecting others as well, but being, honest or as transparent as you can be.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I think being, you have to have the confidence to be transparent because you have to know that you're backing yourself and you have confidence to speak what is really on your mind and what you're capable of. Because if you don't have that confidence and trust in yourself, then you just want to show other, well, I can do everything. I can do it all. And then that's when you can get yourself into situations where you're agreeing to things that you don't want to do. So again, that core confidence and backing yourself, being clear with your communication, leading with, we're getting all these takeaways here, leading with compassion and gratitude, having transparency, knowing how to set clear boundaries. They're all absolute game changers if you want to be stepping into the right path that is aligned with you. One thing I do wonder if you have any advice on is for people who have multiple different passions, like, I know you do as well. I have many passions and it's taken me a long time to sort of hone in on just, doing one thing first. What sort of advice do you have for them if they have so many things they want to do and they're not sure where to start? They don't know which one's calling to them. What would you say?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of the times, yeah, you think you like, for instance, I did photography. I love photography, and then I went and I followed it like in a commercial sense. I fucking hate it. Sorry, are we allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah, I it just took the passion right out of it, trying to do it for a business, right? And that was a very expensive endeavor because camera equipment is not cheap. Now, the skill I learned takes me through a lot of other things, so it's still worth its weight in gold. But I find, especially in your 20s, if you can somehow foster a mentoring relationship with someone, I think it's important because when you're in it, it's really hard to see around you because you're so in it. And so when you have that other person who is experienced and is sort of seeing the bigger picture and can have conversations with you where, they hear what you're saying and then reflect it back so you can hear it and go, oh, is that what I said? No, that's not what I want to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think that what do they call it? Not proactive feedback, active listening.
Oh, yeah.
Active listening. I think that's really important with anyone you do, but especially in a mentoring relationship, because I was just even saying it, the other day with a friend I asked a question, this person said their answer, and then I said, so what I'm hearing is da 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 da. And I'm qualifying, like, is that what you meant? Am I interpreting it right or whatever? And so that's really powerful for someone to hear back.
Yes.
So if I were talking to someone and I mentor, quite a few individuals and they go, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And so I say, okay, what I'm hearing is you want to have another child. You also want to, develop in your career and get promoted. And you also want to move. Okay. So is that right? Because that's a lot.
Like, whoa, wait a second.
Before I potentially give you some advice, just know that, childcare and just having a family is difficult, let alone trying to now simultaneously climb the corporate ladder in today's environment. Like, you might need to make a concession and do one thing at a time and first, but you can have it all, just maybe not all at the same time. And then it's like, which is the bigger priority? Is the second child the priority, or is it the job is the priority? Because now we need to put it into a chronological time plan, right? So I think it's depending on what stage of life you're in. If you're just starting out and you're like, I love this, love that, whatever. You go nuts, go do it all, really. If you're sort of mid-career, maybe you're hitting your 30s and you're like, okay, like, is this it? I'm not too sure. Then it might be a balancing act between I'm going to start this in my personal time and I'm going to maintain my current job for, financial stability. It's good to take risks, but sometimes, I hear a lot, oh, I'm so sick of my job, I just want to quit and get this job. It's a lot easier to get a new job when you have a job. When you quit your job and then try to find a new one, there might be a 6-month gap. And then stress comes into it. Now you're making bad decisions because of financial. Exactly. You know what I mean? So
fear-based rather than, what you really want. Yep.
So it depends what's going on. And so your financial situation to maybe take bigger risks. And also from a health perspective, because, you might want a child, but that might take a while to do. Like, there's a lot of components, right? Yeah. But one at a time is ideal. And understand, is this something you want to do as a career, get paid, and then have maybe some restrictions put on it? Or is it something you just want to freely enjoy, not get paid, not make it a business, and just it fills your soul and it just makes you happy? And because guaranteed, if you try to do what makes you happy and try to turn it into it, there is a slight possibility it could ruin it.
Absolutely. Well, it's taken, perfect example was me. I went into filmmaking and I ended up going into more corporate video because I didn't want that, inconsistency of the filmmaking life and having to travel everywhere and do a big film and then you might have 6 months off and 6 months on. I wanted a little bit more stability than that. So I went into corporate, and obviously I love my job. I love my job. But it did turn it from a passion, a creative, artistic passion, into a more technical, logical thing. And it took me a while I'll never forget the first 2 weeks of me editing at Sydney Classic. I had my first couple of videos that I did, I got feedback. Of course, you get feedback, right, from the client. And here's me, this fresh out of film school, 26-year-old going, how dare they? They have feedback? I did this. This is my creative work. Why are they questioning it? And it took me so long to go, wait a second. There's
a scope.
This is a corporate video. They are the ones, they know what they want. And I just have to make that happen. That's the thing. I have to get over it. And yeah, so it took a while to sort of find that balance again, and then, you know, to start doing more video things on the side for myself and start using it for my music and to get creative in my own ways, because like you said, it's such a trap. You can really take your passion and go, I'm going to do this forever. And as soon as money and deadlines and clients and everything gets involved, it can change it a little bit. And I'm really grateful I've been able to sort of find that balance now. So I'm really happy with where I'm at now. But it's also because I understand that it's not about me. You know, it's not, this is not my creative shoot. This is the client's shoot. And I'm here to just make it
I'm being
happen.
paid for this.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I laugh so much when I think about it, because I was like livid. I was like, how dare they? Oh my gosh.
It's boundaries, but in a different way.
Hilarious.
But, you know, it's important that you have joy in every day, right? Because like sometimes the job might be not all that, but like you have a work bestie, and your office or where you work is across the street from a park, and you do, you know, your park lunches there, and it allows you to do other stuff. So you have to weigh up. I remember one of my first corporate jobs, and I thought I was going to work there forever. And then the controller came in and he's like, you know, after a couple of years, you know, when you move on to a new role. And I was like, huh? Like, I honestly thought I was working here for 95 years. Like, this is my job. This is my office or whatever. So, you know, I think it's important, you know, to understand there's ebbs and flows, but sometimes, I don't want to say complacency like that.
Routine though.
Mundane stuff. Time is actually could work for you, because it could just give you that other time you need to do something else. But ultimately, you need to wake up and experience joy every day. Otherwise, what is the point of anything?
100%.
So try to find that, and not just within your job or your passion. Try to find that in your relationships, and try to be, you know, I just think it's good practice. Try to bring that to others. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing what, like, I don't know about you, but I remember any compliment anyone's ever given me at any time. You know what I mean? Like,
it makes a difference. It really
lands,
does.
and it could be a throwaway comment someone made. Maybe they don't even think it, but I was just like, yesterday I was in the doctor's office, and she was like, okay, I'm just, you know, Medicare, oh my God, you don't look 44. And I was like, someone was with me. I'm like, did you hear that? I don't look
clock
44.
It, clock it.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, she has no idea. She's just like reading a form. And I was like, thank you. That's made my year. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I feel like also, I don't know about you, but ever since 2020, a lot of that stopped. Like, there was, whether it was that, you know, we weren't leaving our houses that much anymore, we weren't interacting as much, but I feel like a lot of people are a lot more timid to speak their mind, even if it's a positive thing anymore. Yeah. And so now post 2020, when I do receive a compliment, it's so rare that I really do go, oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I got one of them as well when I went to because I never get makeup. I'm still learning how to do makeup at 36. Oh my gosh. So I walked into Sephora and I told a girl that. I said, look, I'm 36. I still have no idea what foundation. I'm wearing like BB cream every day and like a little bit of mascara. And she's like, you're 36? What? And I was like, come on. She's like, no, I'm being serious. I was like, oh, that looks like a real compliment. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That's very lovely.
And it can happen at every age, because like, I think I was probably around your age. Like, I can't even think back. Like, when I was before 30, I never wore any makeup. So the fact that like I didn't wear any mascara until I was in my 30s just blows my mind. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
good on you. I love
it doesn't matter when, and it's not like I'm like layering it on, but I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I think some people go, by this age, we should know this, or we should be able to do this. And I think that's silly. Like, start a business. Oh, I'm, 50. I can't start a business. Yeah, you can.
No. These are the limiting beliefs, right? These are the things that you need to start looking at first before you can start to figure out who you truly are. So, okay, we've had so many amazing takeaways. I have one final question for you. I could go on for hours, obviously, but I know you're a busy woman. You got a lot on today. So the takeaway, I loved that one for people who have multiple passions. Really try and have someone that they can, what did you call it? Active listening?
Well, soundboard,
yeah.
But it's that active listening of, they hear what you're saying and they can sort of surmise it for you. Yeah. And then you can actually sort of register it to go. Is that, they can help you sort through it all, because I think we underestimate when you're so close to something and it's so important to you. We tend to lose some of the details, or we're not actually conscious of what we're saying out loud. Yeah, absolutely. And I think so a trusted advisor, a trusted person in your life can help to, and sometimes it comes from someone you don't even really know that well. because
Yeah.
they don't have
Yeah.
any,
No attachment.
family
Yep.
tends to put you in a box and you stay in that
Yep.
box forever.
Yep.
So someone who doesn't know you won't put you in that box and be like, oh, and give you some advice. So I always try to look out for someone who you can identify with, or I don't want to say look like, but for me, it was important to have a female role model,
Yep.
and someone of color was super important, to shared lived experience.
Definitely.
But someone who is where you want to go. So, and don't be afraid to, like, I've walked up to people at an event that was a speaker at this event. I was like, hey, do you want to go for coffee? I'd really love to talk to you. Like, I have no shame. I will ask anybody for anything if it's, polite, and
It's
I obviously
fantastic. How
give
else?
back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And half of
Why
them
not?
are going to say yes, and you're going to have these opportunities that you wouldn't have had if you were too shy.
Exactly. What's the
So
worst that can happen, right? Like, you say
exactly.
no.
Yeah.
Okay,
You go,
next.
fair enough. Bye.
Yeah, done. Snooze, you lose. Yeah.
So, with your super busy life and doing so many things that you love, obviously there must be some times that get a little bit, I'm going to pull my big, beautiful curly hair out right now.
Yeah.
What do you do in those times? How do you find center? What sort of takeaway can we give to the listeners when they're having a really stressed out day? Is there one technique that you use, or do you have a bit of a routine or a treat at the end of the day? Whatever. What is your tip?
Yeah, I think, look, stress has been a part of my life for decades, and it's just fascinating how at the age I'm at, I still don't have all the answers. But I mean, I do say yoga was a game changer because you actually learn the art of breathe. If you have a good yoga teacher, you learn the
Yes,
art of
important.
breathing. Because up until yoga, I was like, yeah, I know how to breathe, duh. And it's like, no, actually, there is an awareness to breath. I'm teaching someone right now in the trades that this is a new concept for him.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal to see the transformation of breath. Do you know what I mean? Because if you don't know, you don't realize. And like, I think anytime in the moment, if someone like triggers you, like I can feel my skin get hot and my fists start to clench. The only thing you can do sometimes is just breathe. And it's just slowing down that breath. It really only takes minimum 5 breaths, ideally 10. And I usually try to reach for a glass of water because that buys you a bit of time, and also it flushes out. Because what's happening on a physical level is your fight or flight, is being triggered. Your cortisol levels, the stress hormones going up, and you're getting ready to fight or run or protect yourself. So you don't want to be in that state all day. And that's usually what happens is everyone's stressed, they're high, and they don't even realize it because you get so tense. And if it becomes such a constant thing every day, you're now on your way to burnout, and people don't recognize that spectrum. I talk about it a lot in yoga, like on the spectrum of stress or, burnout. Are you 11 or are you a 1? And do you even know? Like, my trigger is if I start honking the horn in traffic and start verbally communicating with the car in front of me, I know that that's my sign of stress.
Yeah.
Because if I was relaxed, I wouldn't give a shit. It's like, yeah, whatever. Sydney driving, it's like, take your time. So understanding what that trigger is, my sleep goes out. I don't get enough water. I start to go for fast food or sweets. Like, you need to understand your personal triggers to stress, and then you need to course correct. So maybe it's just like, okay, today I'm just going to focus on getting water because I need to be hydrated. I'm just going to try to focus on getting sleep. So at the bare minimum, when I'm in my most stressful state, I travel quite a bit. I'm responsible for two very large regions. I go back to the basics, sleep and water. Then if I can, add on food and exercise. And then add on self-care, which would be, I love to get a facial. I love to do, yoga class or meditation. Love to go for, longer walks where I'm not on a time thing, or, a nourishing conversation with a best mate that is like, sort of takes you out of what you're worrying about or what you're fearful of. Because really a lot of this stress, I mean, I don't want to give away people's, power to others. A lot of it is self-inflicted because we're a perfectionist, or we gotta do it. We put pressure on ourselves. When, just the other day I was on leave and I had to do work, and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. My motto on my holiday was, I don't give a fuck. Because it's still going to be there when I get back. And you know what? If I don't get the report done on time, oh well. Like, the world is not going to end. Like at Mad Max, I think I said it to you. We make burritos. This is not a life.
We're not life-saving.
Yeah, like, come on, like, put it in perspective. But when you're so stressed, everything is just your heightened level of like, everything's important, everything is urgent. And that's a dangerous place to be, because if your body is in that state of stress all the time, your cortisol levels are only supposed to flash every now and then. You shouldn't be having to fight or flight 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for, 52 weeks.
Yeah.
So, and then that's going to lead to disease because you're creating a toxic environment, and then you're going to have and then, don't even get me started about depression and mental health and stuff like that, right? So I think, like, don't try to change everything all at once. Just, for me, sleep and water, okay? And if you can't do any of that, breath. Breath first. If I'm picking an order, breath is ideally first, good amount of sleep, because if you don't have sleep, you can't do anything. Water, because you need to keep flushing things through. Your organs need to be hydrated. And then, but I think if you can pick a modality from a, maintenance, like a yoga, for some people it might be boxing and they just got to punch it out. Whatever works for you. But you've got to make it so that you actually want to do it, not because somebody told you that you have to do it and that's the only solution. Like, yoga is not going to solve everything for everybody. I just think it's an easily accessible, low impact, and it gives you the maximum benefit, than going and doing Pilates or, boxing or something like that. You can do yoga at home by yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I love that, because you've given people options. If it's, if you're in the middle of an office and you can't do a yoga class, focus on the breath. If you've got a little bit more scope, really focus on your sleep and your water and everything like that. But you're spot on. I think definitely once you start to tell yourself, I have to do yoga, it becomes a chore, and then you don't even want to do it. And even when you do step into it, you're not enjoying it, and it's not having those same benefits. So wow.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, we've got so many takeaways today. I love it. Thank you so much for your time, Mel. I really appreciate it. But I'll probably steal you back in a couple of months if you're interested, because I know you have so much knowledge. Yeah.
We could shoot the shit about a lot of stuff. Let me tell you.
Let's get a coffee or a cocktail next time and we'll just jam.
Oh yeah, do a podcast that's like martinis or margaritas, lime margaritas. Oh, that'd be a great podcast. I'd do that. Oh, totally.
Who knows what's gonna come out?
2 margaritas in. Seriously, we are talking about some real stuff.
Yeah, we got advice for everyone now. Thank you so much, Mel. Well, I will talk to you soon. Have a beautiful day, and thank you so much for all of your advice.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.